And here we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, to Coffee Talk. That is right, it is time for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having a discussion about what is going on in the world today. And of course, you can find me in the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. And the markers for that are at Coffee Talk Live and at Coffee Talk Chat. Additionally, you can find me at X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat. Well, I should have said at Prepper University. At Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, and X is at Coffee Talk Chat. I got them mixed up. And fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. If anybody would care to look there. One feline in the room. I have Granny Smith sleeping on the floor behind me, but no one else keeping me company. Of course, I do, for those of you who are listening and not able to see, read through as many of the comments as I reasonably can so that you can keep up with the conversation on the live portion. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in so far. I see Dragon is here today, as well as Urban Angst. Monkey and Spectre wants to know where his coffee is. Well, you'll have to go to Starbucks. I know a lot of people say they don't like Starbucks, but they sure do get a lot of business, don't they? As we get ready to dive into the news of the day, I see Helter is here, as well as Brian. Glad you could make it, chiming in on the live portion. And we will, of course, be popping open some snippets from the news. This is first thing that I'm going to pull up, and I have many questions. I have many questions about what happened here. Not going to get too many answers, but there's plenty of speculation to go around, and of course that is the officer involved shooting, and it's become international news. It was Charlotte, North Carolina. There was a warrant being served, and it went very badly. And D-Lo is here. Glad you could make it, D-Lo. Spectre says that Starbucks is too bitter. Well, you got to get them to sweeten it up. You know they do all kinds of weird stuff to the coffee there. Anyways, we'll go ahead and pop this article open, and everybody's covering this story. But I chose to open the story up in the Telegraph. We're going to look at it in the Telegraph. From BBC. I think this is the Telegraph reporting from BBC or BBC News. 3 U.S. police officers shot dead in home siege. Yes and no. So here we go. We're going to read the background on this, and then, I have a little bit of speculation here. 3 law enforcement officers have been fatally shot and 5 others wounded while serving a warrant in Charlotte, North Carolina. At least one suspected attacker was found dead in the front yard of a barricaded home after a standoff that lasted 3 hours, according to police. Authorities said 2 shooters were involved. The injured officers were part of a U.S. Marshals Service lead task force. The officers were attempting to serve a warrant for a felon wanted for possessing a firearm when gunfire erupted on the suburban street. They returned fire at an assailant in the front yard. Then more shots were fired at them from inside the home. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings told in a news conference. It should read, it says told a news conference. Shots were still ringing out more than 2 hours after the attack began on Monday in a residential area in the east end of the city. Residents were asked to shelter in place, and nearby streets were closed to facilitate ambulances and rescues. Several nearby schools were placed on lockdown during the standoff. On X, formerly Twitter, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, Mecklenburg Police Department asked people to steer clear of the area. According to a local network, that's WSOC TV, 1 U.S. Marshal is among the dead law enforcement officers. The attack ended when police stormed the home on Galway Drive. 2 other people were inside the home with a suspect who were being questioned. So Bottom line, Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't know what kind of neighborhood this is. I see there are no sidewalks in the photograph. So, I'm wondering how rural this is or what type of neighborhood this is, because you know what that means. There's one side of the tracks and then there's the other. So you had 8 law officers, because mostly this is U.S. Marshals. 8 of them were shot. 3 of them didn't make it. One individual shot in the front yard, and they do not explain whether or not that person was armed. And I still have not heard anything about this, whether or not that individual who was in the front yard was armed or what triggered this. Why is this being reported by the BBC? Well, the BBC is reporting this because guns bad, and they want the UK citizens to know this is what happens when you put guns into the hands of citizens. That's the narrative. That's why they're talking about this in places where they have extremely strict gun laws. All right. My question would be, and of course, we're talking about someone who should not have been in possession of a firearm anyway. This is a felon who was in illegal possession of a firearm, and the marshal's office caught wind of it and were serving a warrant to search the premises to find this firearm and potentially rearrest this felon. Okay. So he shouldn't have had a gun in the first place. He had one illegally, and that's important to understand. And perhaps more so than that. My question then also would be, how did he get the drop on 8 police officers? They come in force like that to make it almost impossible for you to defend yourself. To make it almost impossible for you to defend yourself. That's why a SWAT team shows up at your door to serve a warrant. That's why you look out your window and you see 20 cops. For whatever reason, they weren't as prepared as they thought they were, and he got the drop on them. And I'd be curious to follow up on this story at some point in the future. I want to see what kind of neighborhood this is, what the felony was that this person has apparently spent time in prison, because it doesn't say. And not in any of the articles I've seen so far does it really say. And what happened with the guy in the front lawn that they shot him to begin with, that started the shooting in the first place. This is a story I'd like to follow up on when more is known. About it. And Sven says maybe a no knock. Yeah, and that's a possibility if they just crashed. But then, of course, there was somebody on the lawn already. He was already out front, and that guy got shot. Was he armed? Did he do something that warranted getting shot? When he was shot, did that cause the people in the house to panic and return fire? And dude's like, oh man, they're just going to kill us anyways. And now he's dead and there's no way to know. Sven says they should have waited. Eventually, dude would have come out from Zigzag Papers and Taco Bell. Okay. Nature Nerd says the Simpsons meme says it best. And Helter says the mayor is a Looney Tune. 8 officers were shot, and she's talking about traffic. She didn't mention about the tragedy until the end. It sounded more like a political speech. Wow. Okay. Yeah, but and think about also the ramifications of that. You've got, how badly prepared were these people that they botched this where they ended up. And I'm not trying to retract from the fact that 3 officers were killed here. But you've got 8 people were shot in total of the law enforcement. 8 were shot, plus these 2 that were in the house. 1 in front of the house, 1 inside. And there were a couple of other people in the house, apparently, that were hiding back there, had nothing to do with what was going on, that are being questioned now. They don't just show up in pajamas, okay? They show up in full body armor with automatic weapons, and usually with often an armored vehicle present. So you've got a bunch of guys in body armor with military grade weapons, possibly an armored vehicle or two, and some guy in the house gets the drop on 8 of you as you're approaching? How did that happen? What kind of gun was it? I haven't seen this yet either. Has anybody seen what type of firearm was used from inside the house? Because I seriously doubt it was fully automatic, because you have to have very special licensing to be in possession of fully automatic weapons in the United States. If you're from overseas, you might not know that based on what the media tries to spoon feed you. We're not allowed to have that here. We're not allowed to have fully automatic weapons. You have to get very special licensing, and it's quite expensive. So that's what I would like to know. What kind of weapon was used? Why was the guy on the front lawn shot that triggered this whole thing? And how come the police were so unprepared for this? Like I said, they have body armor. There was very likely an armored vehicle. They have the option of full auto, which the average citizen does not. Dragon says one news source they were viewing was calling the felon a victim. And Monkey says probably has to be something that could be easily penetrate the house structure. Yeah, and houses don't stand up to gunfire. That's another point too. If I was to stand out in front of your average house and fire a shot from any type of weapon, a pistol, doesn't have to be any special bullet or a high-powered rifle. It would go right through the house and into the house in the next street. Sheetrock and wood and siding is not going to stop a bullet. Most of the time, if you were to line up 2x4s and you shot them with a 9mm, they would shatter. Or if you watch The Walking Dead, and in one episode, Negan stopped a 9mm bullet with his bat. It lodged in the bat. And people who saw that were like, bullshit. And I saw a lot of demonstrations with it. If you shoot a bat with a 9mm, the thing explodes. It shatters. And Monkey says it's like paper mache. Yeah, exactly. And New York Patriot is here. Glad you could make it, Patriot. Gary Edwards says he's here too. Don't panic. That's my job. Yeah, you must be in customer service. And Prime Mover says saw a short of you brushing Uncle. Reminded me you are live. Oh, excellent. Yeah, Uncle loves that brush. Of course, some of you know who we're talking about here. Uncle, of course, is that ginormous tuxedo cat that I have. Some cats don't like that. He loves it. You get the brush out and he flips. But and he saw that on the cat channel that I have, because I put a link to that at the very beginning of this. They gave me some crazy moniker for it. It's at Stray Cat Sanctuary 1945. And it's just an experiment I'm doing, showcasing just cats on a channel. And the damn thing picked up like 1,000 subscribers practically overnight and then stagnated. And all it is shorts of the cat. It's crazy. And then here, I can't get anybody on. ScrewTube has crushed Coffee Talk and Prepper University practically out of existence. But cats, no problem. And I see Fluke Man is here. And then Urban Angst says, apparently Stephen King posted a dumb comment on X that included the phrase "ain't guns wonderful" and has been roasted by the internet. Well, he's, despite the crazy stuff that he writes, and he's a good writer and a good storyteller, fair enough, he is really, really milk-soppingly, drippingly liberal to the point if it's sickening. It's like too much sugar in your tea. Kind of listening to him actually talk in real life. It's just like, oh God, just shut up, Stephen. But yeah, he leans in that direction very, very heavily, very heavily. And Monkey says maybe it can be the elephant gun, but then it would be heavy as heck to carry, and even to fire ammunition for it can cost you into the thousands. Yeah. And there's a hell of a kick on those too. I've seen that. Brian says, don't a lot of cops have military background or experience with guns? You would think so. You would think so. A lot of people from the military, veterans, do transition to law enforcement, but very few of them actually are. From what I've seen, most of them are just somebody who went to the police academy, and you have to pass physical fitness to be in the police academy. But often, there's very little training that comes afterwards, or very little required, or very little range time required afterwards. Um, and it's been that way for a long time. I remember an episode of Columbo that we're joking about that, because Columbo needed to go to the range because he's required to go to the practice range at least once every 2 years or every 3 years or something like that to remain qualified. And he didn't want to bother to go, and he was trying to get somebody to go for him because he didn't want to do it. He was like, I hardly ever carry the gun anyways. What's the point? And I've seen this in modern practice, and this is something that they were making fun of a lot when I was still living in Topeka, where they were alluding to the fact that the cycle cops, that is the police officers who ride the bicycles, are the only ones on the Topeka Police Department that are in any kind of shape. So there we go. I'll catch up a couple more comments here, and we'll move on to the next subject. Sven says shadow ban doesn't exist except for the wrong-minded people. Yeah, no kidding. Well, and I've said this 100 times. Prepper University, there's almost 67,000 subscribers there. If I put a video up, I'm lucky if I can get 500 views in a month. And once upon a time, I used to get tens of thousands of views. And I've got a few videos with over 1 million views there. And one day they decided they didn't like me. Now nobody can find the channel. It just gets crushed. And the same things happen in the Coffee Talk now. Urban says it's easy to be a millionaire liberal living in a gated community protected by private security. Yeah, it must be nice, because I've got to do it myself. I've got to protect myself and my family on my own. Sven says even the military has a 10% idiot rule, more so now. And my wife was in the military. She was in the military for 21 years, and she transitioned to the National Guard. And she said the same thing about it. The term weekend warriors, it's fitting, because a lot of those guys, they are not in shape, and they'll barely make it on the annual physical fitness tests. Cruising says, Cruising and Musing is here, says the training levels vary from police department to police department. Even here locally, our police department for the city versus the county sheriff's department have different standards. And that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. New York Patriot says, I know too many cops and only qualified, and that is the extent of their training. Exactly. They're more concerned with them being social workers now than anything else. The majority of what they do is all book training, and they end up using their pencil more than anything. basically as we transition to the next phase here, and this will be a Daily Mail article here. As you well know, in the last week or so, the colleges and universities have been cracking down on these protests that have been going on in their campuses, especially since it's been revealed. Two drastic things have been revealed that we've talked about over the last few days. One, that the majority of the people that have been camping out on these campuses and protesting and stirring things up apparently are not even from those colleges and universities. And the two, they've been funded by organizations like Soros. And that's making people extremely uncomfortable now. Not that anything will be freaking done about it, but there you are. And I'll read a couple more comments, and then we'll get this cracked open here. Nature Nerd says Stephen King makes more money in his night of sleep than we do in a year because of all the books and movie royalties. Correct. Yeah. So he sleeps very comfortably, I'm sure. And Donna Beaver is here. Says, sorry they're late. Been sick. Thumbs up, like, and share. Yes, please do thumbs up, like, and share if you don't mind. And sorry to hear you haven't been feeling well, Donna. Hope you're doing better. Daily Mail article. Anti-Israel activists smashed through the windows to seize historic building. So since they were, and here he is actually breaking the glass so they can break into this building on Columbia University's property. Since they were ejected from the property by force by the police, now they're going to try to hold up in the buildings. So there we go. Rogue group of anti-Israel protesters on campus at Columbia University seized the historic Hamilton Hall on campus and are refusing to leave until all of their demands are met. Yeah, that will never happen. Earlier on Monday, school officials began suspending pro-Palestinian student activities or activists, who refused to dismantle a protest camp after the Ivy League school declared a statement in talks, stalemate in talks. Wow, I'm not paying attention. Seeking to end the polarizing demonstration. Yeah. University President Nimat Minouche Shafiq, wow, said in a statement that days of negotiations between student organizers and academic leaders failed to persuade demonstrators to remove the dozens of tents set to express opposition to the war in Gaza. Around 12:30 a.m. local time, students began breaching Hamilton Hall, which was the site of a historic protest against racial injustice in the U.S. in the 1960s. We will not leave until Columbia meets every one of our demands, one activist screamed from a balcony in the building. The groups have demanded that the university divest from Israel. Are they invested in Israel? I seriously doubt it. And hey, what time is it? It is 21 minutes and 51 seconds in, and I have just gotten my notification from YouTube that I am live. It's a little early today. But nice to know that I'm live, YouTube. Thanks for letting me know so that I can find my channel and watch the live stream and participate. According to the Columbia Spectator, the student newspaper, the group who made it inside the building threw their belongings aside before beginning their immediate efforts to barricade themselves inside. Images from the mass demonstration show sleeping bags, coats, rucksacks, and blankets strewn across the ground and piled up in front of doors. The students stormed the building located along the south lawn, which has been the scene of the university's anti-Israel encampment for over a week. They quickly climbed the stairs, dragging down tables and chairs from classrooms, which they had used to barricade the doors from inside. The building was locked down in less than 5 minutes, according to the student publication, and protesters allowed no one to enter. Yeah. And you notice everybody's wearing masks. Just pointing that out. You know, when they demonstrated in the 60s, as was pointed out, this is not the first time this building has been seized for a protest. When they were protesting racial inequality in the 60s, you could see their faces. You know why? Because they weren't cowards. Protesters blocked security cameras inside the building with black trash bags and tape, and according to a source from within the building, at least 3 facility workers remained inside until 1 a.m. Several individuals, including the facilities workers, left the building around 1:10 after protesters removed the barricades blocking one door, rebolting it after the workers left. One of the workers yelled, "They held me hostage," as he left the building and smacked somebody's camera, according to the newspaper. Hundreds of others gathered outside the building, and some linked arms to form a human chain, blocking the entrance. "We will not leave until Columbia meets every one of our demands," the protesters said in a directed chant. Good for them. I'll catch up a couple of comments and we'll get into this. Fluke Man says British police are ordering uniforms in quadruple X sizes. Wow. That's nuts. That is nuts. Gary Edwards says liberals can't compete on a level playing field generally, thus the reliance on double standards and anti-conservative algorithms on internet platforms. And Urban Angst said, I don't understand how non-students are allowed to be part of the protest. That is trespassing. Exactly, which is why now you're seeing them being flushed out of these campuses and universities across the United States. It's been revealed many of these people are not even from those universities, so they are trespassing, and that gives them the excuse they need to call law enforcement and tell them to get off. Country Livin' said, my daughter is graduating from college now with criminal justice degree and will be a cop in a city of 100,000. I pray people support police in our area. And Zane is here, says they just got the live notification, I guess. Is that what you're implying there? And Brian says, I never get the notifications. Wow. That's how they hold you down. It's the man holding me down. Nature Nerd says, feel bad for the Colombian students that just want to go to class. Exactly. Exactly. And this is what they do. You want to end this? They said they won't leave until their demands are met. You want to know how you end it? You make sure that they can't get any food or water. Shut the utilities off to the building. No electricity, no water, no gas. And make sure no food crosses that line. They'll give up in a day. They'll give up in a day because they don't have what it takes to stick it out. And New York Patriot says they have zero sympathy for what's going on at Columbia University. The administration of that college fostered this sort of behavior, and they're now being eaten by their own. Exactly, because they turn on their own. And Nature Nerd says these students have free speech, so why are barricading themselves like they live in colonial France? Yeah. Well, there's a difference between free speech and trespassing, and free speech and rioting, and free speech and inciting violence. And they want to be aggressive about it. And they can't be aggressive about it if they push their luck and they get thrown off campus by riot police or arrested. So this is a way for them to try to force the issue. Plus, it stirs everybody up. Because now everybody's like, yeah, woo, riot time. And, it's riot season. So everyone's going to run out and try to support them, even though they have no idea what the hell's going on. And that's how you have the human chain linked around the outside of that university. Like I said, easy fix. Shut off the electricity, shut off the water. And as far as the human chain, the fire department can take care of that. Okay, you turn a hose on that human chain, and as soon as they start getting cold and pushed around by that water, they'll go home. Believe it. Dragon says these people feed on weakness, and the leadership of Colombia has offered them a banquet of it. Very good. The minute these protesters were allowed to set up the first tent with no repercussions, they had won. And that puts Colombia between a rock and a hard place because, yeah, they did foster this type of behavior to begin with. And now they've lost control of it, and they can't stand up to it. They don't know what to do. Helter wants to know if they're going to be treated like terrorists. You mean, are they going to be treated like the people on January 6th? I doubt it. Fluke Man says, not saying protesters covering faces is good or bad. We'll say in the 60s didn't have to deal with cameras everywhere. It's impossible to get away from it. That's true, too. And Urban Angst said the way it ended is by banning all funding that originates in Qatar. Yeah, or a funding that's coming from China or coming from Lebanon or coming from Iran or any of these other places that these colleges and universities have been accepting money from. Colleges and universities in the United States should not be getting donations from interest groups in other countries. They shouldn't be, because it's too easy to influence them. Colleges and universities and places of learning should not have political affiliation, nor should judges or unions. You'd eliminate a lot of problems if that was the idea. And Gary Edwards suggests that striving for stolen 60s relevance is the same as stolen valor. Fluke Man says if they had common sense and general knowledge, they'd have brought supplies with them so their protests will last longer. And Zane suggests there's a news article about a man who attacked people with a sword in the UK. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't be the first time either. Wouldn't be the first time either. But, logical solutions aren't the way to go. If you want to fix what's wrong with the world, all you got to do is keep raising taxes Just ask your dear old, sweet old, lovable old Uncle Joe. Tampa Free Press article, Biden administration justifies tax hikes based on racial criteria. Oh yeah, that'll work out just great, Joe. Thanks thanks for that. That's just what we need. That's that's just what we need. You want to create more division in the country? That's what we need to do. Biden administration's analysts of its review revenue proposal for fiscal year 2025 argues targeted tax hikes that disproportionately affect white people would ease racial wealth inequality. Yeah, that's a great idea. Increasing taxes on capital gains and income based wealth would reduce racial wealth inequality for Black and Hispanic families because Lord knows there's no such thing as a wealthy Black or Hispanic person. They don't exist, apparently. The Treasury Department outlined in the analysis published in mid March. The Treasury points out that white families disproportionately hold assets subject to capital gains tax or are in a higher tax bracket, meaning a hike in those taxes would benefit Black and Hispanic families. How? What are you going to do with the money? Are you going to give it to Black and Hispanic families? And again, the more you just give people something, the less they appreciate it. Furthermore, since white people in the United States outnumber Blacks and Hispanics, for example, Black people have fallen from 13% to 12% of the population in the recent census. Yeah, there's probably more wealthy white people than there are wealthy Black ones because they're outnumbered like 5 to 1 by their Caucasian counterparts in the US, at least. Just off the top of my head, it's got to be at least 5 or 6 to 1. So yeah, there's going to be more wealthy white people than wealthy Black people. This is called cherry picking the statistics so that you could have a reason to, one, raise taxes, and two, pretend like you give a shit about Black voters and Hispanic voters by default, which also, despite how it looks, are a minority, even though there's more of them than there are of Black people in the United States. And not taking into consideration at all how that's going to upset the balance. If white people aren't racist yet, this will tip it. Because what the hell are you going to take money from me for so that you can try to balance off some imaginary line? How much division do you need? Do you want us killing each other in the streets? We were getting along. We were moving away from that. America was moving away from this. And ever since the Obama administration, it's been going back. It's been the clock has been turning back on race relations in the United States. This will just make it worse. And I catch up a couple more comments here, and you can mull that over. Nature Nerd says January 6th, they can see all the cell phones in the areas of these protests and riots. Pretty scary they can do that, though. Yeah. The technology is very scary. Country Living says they work at a medium-sized regional university in Minnesota, and they agree the colleges are getting money from foreign sources. I see it firsthand. And that shouldn't be a thing. And Prime Mover said it's the math is racist mentality. And once again, and we read the article on it a few weeks back, Bill Gates is responsible for that because the math being racist doctrine is funded by the Bill and Marlena Gates Foundation. That was exposed a few months ago. Country Living says the government telling people again that they can't make it on their own. Exactly. You got to earn your way. If people just, again, it's just like dealing with a child. If you give the kid everything, you spoil them and they're miserable and rotten and dishonest and disobedient. If they have to earn their way, they grow up honest, responsible, and with a good work ethic. If you're just going to keep giving, and if you offer people handouts, human beings are like water. They're always looking for the path of least resistance. Most people would not want to refuse a handout. Once upon a time, they did. Who remembers? Who remembers What's Happening? Remember the show, 70s sitcom What's Happening? I think it had like 3 seasons. Goofy show, primarily black cast. You know, primetime sitcom from back in the day. And there was a character on the show named Shirley, and she was an overweight waitress in their local hangout. They have a diversity hire episode back on that show where Shirley was offered a job in an office, and it paid better than the job that she had as a waitress, and it had less responsibilities. And so she was like, okay, sure, I'll take this job. Some of you might remember this. I don't know. And I haven't seen this in a million years, so I might be paraphrasing a little bit. She found out while she was there that basically she was a diversity hire. She wasn't qualified for the job, but that company had a quota that needed to be met because of affirmative action. And that's why they hired her. And they at some point even say to her, hey, what difference does it make? But for her, it made a difference. She was like, if I'm not qualified for the job, I don't want it. If there's nothing for me to do here, I don't want the job. I want something to do. I want to earn it. And so she quit. And that episode was a reflection of the attitude at the time in the 70s. As I pointed out before, also an old article from the Boston Herald newspaper that I read. And one of these days, I've got to try to find that article. I've tried looking through their archives, but I don't want to be subscribed to the Boston Herald newspaper to get into their archives. I don't want to pay for anything. But the article, they did an expose on why, and some of you have heard this before, why it is that they couldn't get Black and Hispanic people to take the police sergeant's exam. And it turned out that they didn't want to take it because there was a lower standard on account of affirmative action. And this was again in the mid 1980s. And they were like, how can I look fellow officers, white and Asian officers, in the eye as a sergeant? And they're wondering, did he really pass, or did he get a pass because he's allowed to get 20 points lower than I did to be a sergeant? How do I know he did it at the same level as me? They didn't want that stigma. So they were like, if they make the exam even, I'll take it. Otherwise, I don't want to take it, because they were trying to figure out why they didn't have enough Black and Hispanic sergeants in the Boston Police Department at the time. There used to be some honor and integrity there. Now there isn't. Brian says Samuel Jackson, Whoopi Goldberg, Will Smith, Eddie Murphy. Oh, he's naming some people. 75% of the NBA, add them to the list. And on and on and on. There's a lot of, go to Atlanta. Look at that Millionaires Row in downtown or in the surrounding suburbs of Atlanta. It's all Black neighborhoods, and they're mansions. Gary Edwards says tax exemption due to racial bias hangs a scarlet letter on people of color. It's the same overt patronage as affirmative action, which is done to create hate and division. And Zane suggests that in California, white people are in the minority. It probably looks that way now. Fluke Man says they always say they're helping Blacks and Hispanic, but never mention whites and Asians. No. And Dragon said, what should the Biden administration do to address America's racial divide? Abandon identity politics. Exactly. And Urban Angst says Bill and Melinda. Did I say the wrong name? Did I say Marlena or something? Bill and Melinda. And a couple more here and we'll get caught up. Cruising and musing. My mother refused handouts raising 3 boys. It was brutal because even with her earning barely under the poverty line, we couldn't get assistance unless she agreed to stay home and not work. Yeah, and if you have a good work ethic, you want to earn it. You see the value in it. You don't want a handout. I mean, if you need a leg up here and there occasionally, that's fine, but you can't live that way. Always looking for that hustle, always looking for the easy way. As I had suggested yesterday in the movie Mo Money, a Damon Wayans production, I believe. He starred in the film, didn't he? Mo Money. And when he went to get a job, his brother was like, a job ain't nothing but work, because they were hustlers. They stole, they cheated people. That's what they did. Fluke Man says Gates said math is racist, then Microsoft is racist. Software is based on mathematics. Exactly. But yeah, that fund, and if you didn't see it, we read that article a few weeks ago. It was revealed that they're the ones that are funding the math being racist initiative in public schools. So yeah, more division. Gary Edwards says challenge check 3 employment quota boxes with one hire. Oh, okay. It said, I don't think employment was spelled correctly there. Nature Nerd says Bill Gates and the climate agenda is racist, and he stated multiple times Africa is growing too fast. His organization hands out contraceptives in Africa. Why is that any of his business? No, it's not his business. It's not his business. And he, why can't you just sit back and enjoy your money? I have no problem with somebody being super crazy wealthy. I don't care. I don't care. Bill Gates, he found a way to make a fortune. He bought out somebody's program, sold it to IBM. A lot of people are like, hey, that's shady. He was smart enough to do it. He figured out his game. I don't care. Enjoy your money and leave me the hell alone. Why are you worried about what the hell I'm doing? Why worry about what I'm doing? It's when these people want to, they get up on that pedestal and they think it gives them the right to play chess with everyone's lives. That's when I start having a problem, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's embarrassing and frustrating at the same time. Can't you just live your life? You've got to fund all these initiatives. You got to get involved in all these programs that are, quite frankly, destructive or unraveling society or pitting people against each other. How are you helping anything? What are you improving? What are you really improving? Boy, I tell you, at the end of days, people like this are in for a surprise. And it won't be a good one. Since we mentioned something about Biden earlier, we may as well talk about Orange Man. That's right. Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. the Neanderthal liberal battle cry. And this is a Reuters article. You may have heard this already. Trump has been fined $9,000 for violating gag order in New York hush money trial. I heard it was 8,000. I don't know if it's 8 or 9 specifically. Reuters says 9,000. He has a gag order, and this is something that I find offensive in courts anyways, that a judge can order you not to talk about your own trial. This is his life. Take it or leave it, like Trump or don't. He is being railroaded, whether you like him or not. The fact that this is even going to trial is bullshit. The hush money trial, the non-disclosure agreement payout that he gave, it's not illegal. And this is the first time I've ever heard of anyone being brought to court for doing this, unless they violated that order. If I was paid hush money and blabbed, I would end up in court. That's not what happened here. As a matter of fact, I think she did violate that order, and she's the one that should be on trial. Didn't she violate the gag order? So here we go. Judge overseeing Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial fined the former U.S. president $9,000 on Tuesday for statements that he found violated a gag order in the case. Justice Juan Merchan's order came as Trump's trial was due to resume in New York, with testimony from a banker familiar with accounts involved in the former U.S. president's alleged scheme to influence the 2016 election by covering up, a sex scandal. Trump, the Republican candidate for 2024 presidential election, is charged with falsifying business records to conceal a $130,000 payment to porn star Stormy Daniels in exchange for her silence about a sexual encounter she said she had with Trump in 2006. Wow, he got off light. $130,000? When Bill had to pay off that last one, it cost him $800,000. Bill Clinton, of course, has done this as well and has never been on trial, by the way. Trump pleaded not guilty and denied having sex with Daniels, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford. I won't remember that in 5 minutes. The historic criminal trial is the first of a former U.S. president and began on April 22nd. It's the first trial of its kind anywhere. Roughly 24 Trump supporters rallied outside the courthouse on Tuesday morning, chanting his name and waving banners that read Trump 24. A local Republican organization has called for supporters to turn out after Trump complained that few people were protesting the trial. Well, you know, they have those designated free speech zones they set up in places like that, and you might not can fit more than 24 people in there. I don't know if you've ever seen where they set up those barricades and they're like, yeah, here's your box, protest in here. So I don't know if more than that can get in there, or maybe that's what he was complaining about. Also, keep in mind, some nitwit set himself on fire last week in one of those boxes, or 2 weeks ago, right? Let me see. Banker Gary Farrow, who is not accused of wrongdoing, testified on Friday about financial records filed by Trump's one-time lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, who prosecutors say helped carried out the scheme. Trump is required to attend to the trial, and he said he could instead be campaigning ahead of his rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden in the November 5th election, which is exactly why these trials are even happening in the first place. If he's required to be there, he can't campaign. But the media attention he's getting from this is his campaigning, because it makes the common man empathize with him, because we've all been kicked around. Well, many of us, I should say. I can't say everybody. Many of us have been kicked around by law enforcement or by so-called justice or the law. I have. How about you? I can empathize with him getting sand kicked in his face by this lawfare that he's being subjected to. I can absolutely empathize with that. As I catch up a couple more comments, and we'll get into this. Oh, one more thing I'll point out, because they make a clarification. It says the story's been corrected to say the fine was $9,000 and not $8,000 in the headline. So I guess originally it was said that it was $8,000, and so it's been since corrected. That's what I saw originally, $8,000, and that's why I questioned it to begin with. Paul Burke is here. Did I say hi to Paul? Glad you could make it today. And Unknown Nose is also here. It says, my apologies, home repairs. Hey, you fix your house. Be a good steward of your home. You know, the Bible tells the parable in the New Testament, or so-called New Testament, because it's all old now. The parable of the master and his 3 servants. Being a good steward is not just about money. It's about everything that you have, whether you bought it, received it as a gift, found it, however you came by it. Being a good steward implies everything that you put your hands to. Urban Angst says they recall some years ago filling out a job application in the 75% Chinese Mandarin neighborhood in British Columbia. Because I am white, I checked the minority box. I didn't get the job. Oh, well. Oh, no. And Gary Edwards says money is like manure. It stinks in a heap, but if spread about, it makes the whole world fruitful. Brian says Bill Gates was behind the vaccine agenda and lockdowns, biggest advocate for it. And Paul Burke says he's taking after his father. Urban Angst wants Orange Man. He says Orange Man 2024. And Urban's not even in the United States. Yeah, Urban knows Orange Man, bad, beep, boop. Exactly. And Flukeman says, think Bill Gates doing and saying all these crazy things because his money gave him too much free time. If he was struggling to make ends meet, he wouldn't beat his mouthy. Yeah, that's a good point. That's fair. And Zane suggests it's just like how Bush will never be indicted for war crimes. Yeah, they're doing all this to bog Trump down so that he can't campaign, but this is his campaigning. He's more famous for this than anything else. That that mugshot is iconic now. It's iconic now because of the whole circumstances surrounding all of this. And the more they do this, the more he looks like a better candidate than Biden. People don't like Biden anyway. It just gives him an excuse. And Brian suggests that 8,000 or 9,000 is not a lot for someone like Trump. No, but it's probably the maximum they can do for that particular order. Gary Edwards says hush money trial is a dirty underwear misdirection. Look at the skid mark, not the election fraud. There you go. And Helter said Trump gets fined for talking about the trial, but it's hypocritical that everyone on the prosecution table can talk about the trial all they want. That is correct. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And Country Living says the elites can't take over unless we're all fighting with each other. Can't fight back that way. No. An analogy I've made many, many times, and some of you have seen this, some of you haven't. It's like the hand. All separate fingers. Because it's all of us and we're all doing our own thing. But if we need to come together, we're powerful, even dangerous. So what do? Put something in between there so they can't come together. And that's what our government is doing. That's what many governments are doing. That's what many governments are doing all across the nation. And like I said, there are many people who can empathize with that, myself included. I've been railroaded in court. I've been screwed over. I can't tell you how many times in family court and other instances. I've been screwed over by the IRS. I've been screwed over by social workers, by court conciliators, by case managers. And I've watched them do it to other people when I worked for the Juvenile Justice Authority. How they lie and manipulate and cheat people and inject themselves into certain circumstances or mislead people or set people up to take a fall. That's why I can never work in any of those professions again. I have experience in education. I have experience in daycare. I have experience in juvenile justice. I can't work in those professions again. They're too dishonest. They're too dishonest. As I've gotten more and more away from that, I find it's too toxic for me to be associated with. It's not like I'm not all that great. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of being exposed to that type of negativity all the time. And it's expected. It's expected of you, or you're expected to at least turn a blind eye to it. And I don't want to. And if you do see anything that's way out of sorts and report it, whistleblower, anyone, they screw you. They crush you for being honest. But then they go on and on about honesty and transparency and integrity and ethics and all this bullshit. They don't believe it themselves. And they don't demonstrate it. They don't demonstrate it. Urban Angst says that the police booking picture is the best campaign poster ever. Exactly. People look at that and they're like, man, I feel that. I get it. This happened to me in traffic court. This happened to me in family court. This happened to me in small claims court. Somebody got screwed somewhere. Most people, I think, got screwed somewhere by the system, by Big Brother. And they can look at Trump and say, yeah, I get it, man. Even though he's not our peer. Trump's a billionaire. He's not my peer. We're not on the same wavelength at all, but I get this. I understand this much. Country Living says, even if you don't like Trump, you got to admit the country seemed better off when he was in office. Yeah, there's a strong argument for that. And he says, these trials are all BS when nobody put Clinton on trial. Again, like I had pointed out, he got off easy, $130,000 for Stormy Daniels. I can't remember who it was, but one of the women he had an affair with, he paid her $800,000 to shut her up. Daniel, come here, Daniel. Oh, here we go. Want to say hello for a minute? My friend Daniel, coming to say hello. Say hi to everybody, Daniel. Let them see your paw. People like that. Go on, Daniel. And I got a parade going. Granny Smith. Say hi to everybody, Granny Smith. Very, very gentle creature. Little Miss Granny Smith, the apple of my eye. Here's a paw from Granny Smith, too. There's a paw fetish thing going on with cat lovers, I'm telling you what. Paws, anyone? Or peds, actually. They're called peds. Granny Smith is a little darling. Very unique story with Granny Smith. Isn't that right, huh? And there's Miss Kitty, but she's not going to come over here because they're here and she doesn't like cats. Anyways, I'll go ahead and catch these comments up. I got really sidetracked by the felines here. Gary Edwards says, divorce rules for thee, but not for me. And they lie to you, too. They lie to you so much. The court case manager at the time, and I wasn't even divorced. Remember, I wasn't married. This was a custody case, but they call it a divorce anyways for legal purposes. And the case managers are like, oh, it's 50-50, trust me. And then the attorney is like, yeah, that's the biggest lie they tell. It's actually more like 80-85% in favor of the female. They always lean towards the female. Juan says, I'm from a law enforcement family and it's a drama. I respect the law, but I saw the loopholes. New Jersey cops were something. And Country Living says, if he ends up going to jail, maybe he'll win the presidency from jail and then he can pardon himself. That would be something, wouldn't it? Clever. The Prime Mover says, kitty extravaganza. Exactly. Well, they wanted to come in here and see how I was doing, I guess, wondering where I was at. But yeah, it's a snow job, and it's to keep us distracted, and it's to keep him from campaigning. The Justice Department's been weaponized against him, and it's really funny and very hypocritical, as was pointed out. And I mentioned this in one of the articles I read, almost a month ago, with Kamala Harris on The View, saying that we can't have Trump get into office. It would be dangerous for everyone because he'll weaponize the Justice Department against everybody. You mean you're afraid he'll do a little tit for tat? Is that what it is? You did it to him and you're afraid he's going to want revenge? Yeah, I would be too if I was doing somebody dirty like that, and then they might be in a position to reverse it on me. Shouldn't have done it in the first place. If you had just ignored him, he might have faded away. You blew it. You blew it. And now look, again, nobody likes Trump. Nobody likes Biden or Harris anyway. There's a lot of people who don't like Trump, but they like him better than those two. And nobody trusts Kennedy. His own family doesn't trust him. They don't want him running. There's a lot of issues with Kennedy as well. And like I had pointed out, I really believe that guy's a talking head. I don't trust Kennedy because I don't see him answering any legitimate questions. Plus, he's still, he says he's running independently or whatever. He's as Democrat as it comes. And he's a born and bred politician who checks every box, doesn't answer questions, equivocates the hell out of everything. And everything you ask him leads to black people in poverty or the C virus. That was my takeaway. It's like, we weren't talking about that. Why are we on this conversation? Word salad, anyone. You'll get plenty of that from him. But with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find me on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University. Please do check those channels out if you have not, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat. No, at Coffee Talk Live is YouTube. At Coffee Talk Chat is Facebook. No, it's not. It's Twitter. I'm all over the place now. I lost my train of thought. So at Coffee Talk Chat is X, formerly known as Twitter. At Coffee Talk Live is YouTube, and at Prepper University is also YouTube, and fistfulofradio.com. Podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Thanks, everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will